Way back in the much more innocent and optimistic days of late 2024, we visited a planet out in the Korinsky cluster named Tokasha. Though the planet itself was only marginally habitable, it became the center of much inter-clan drama as a result of the industry which took advantage of the resources which could be mined from the planet's rocky bits. Clan Mongoose got the ball rolling, but were booted out as the Ghost Bears, Goliath Scorpions, Jade Falcons, and Hell's Horses moved in. Though the Hellbringer, or Loki if you prefer, later became strongly associated with Clan Jade Falcon, its origins date back to the first decades of the 30th century and the hopes and dreams of Clan Hell's Horses. Often on the receiving end of abuse, the Horse Khan, Aaron Cobb, sought to take advantage of Omnimech technology to forge his clan into a powerhouse. While the grand plans didn't play out as Khan Cobb expected, these events provided valuable insight into the Hellbringer's design. I hope you stick around because this is a spicy one. The first challenge came rather quickly. Coming over a hill and looming from the mist, 3 mechs, a Hellbringer, a Warhawk, and an Executioner slowly appeared. The Hellbringer continued to advance until it was more than 600 meters ahead of the other 2 mechs of the trio, as if to show contempt for the freebirths, as if to say only 1 mech was needed to take one on. Way of the Clans by Robert Thurston. It has been said that the more intricate and detailed the plan, the more opportunities there are for things to go sideways. This was the case for Clan Hell's Horses on Tokasha, who saw their investment in Mechworks Alpha transfer to the hands of Clan Ghost Bear in a trial of possession in November of 2921. This wasn't just a hiccup in Khan Cobb's plans, it was a completely devastating loss which forced a return to their traditional reliance upon conventional tank and infantry in the Horse Tumen. Battlemechs would still have a role to play, but in limited numbers due to the lack of production capacity. What the Hell's Horses were able to build had to make an impression. The Hellbringer was the result of pushing our opportunity cost metrics beyond a level that many felt comfortable, and the final product was an Omnimech that promised to be tremendously powerful for its weight and one that played into the mindset of very aggressive clan warriors, particularly those who were willing to risk everything on a bold first strike. Forged from a standard TE H65 chassis wrapped around a Fusion 325 Extra Light Fusion engine, the name of the game for the Hellbringer was maximizing pod space and cutting costs. While it didn't include dropping down to a lighter engine, it did result in a sacrifice elsewhere. We'll get there when we get there. The default design didn't bother with jump jets, but did include 13 stock double heatsinks for all of your cooling needs. Okay, some of your cooling needs. The poorly fed and neglected elephant in the room was the Hellbringer's 8 tons of Forging Omni H24 standard plate armor. This is a major sticking point for many at a glance, as the other neighboring Omnimechs each carried ferrofibrous armor which offered much better protection. At the 60-ton point, the Mad Dog carried 8.5 tons of ferrofibrous, which was 163 points of protection, while on the other side the Summoner carried 9.5 tons of ferrofibrous, which was 182 points of protection. In the middle of those, the Hellbringer struggled to boast of its 128 points of armor. The choice simplified the production for the Hell's Horses, as well as offered up a total 43 critical locations across the mech structure for pod additions. For good or bad, the Hellbringer was a Hail Mary throw for the Hell's Horses, who needed to produce a powerful Omnimech quickly if they were going to survive the coming conflicts. With 7 tons dedicated to cockpit and gyro, that left a whopping 28.5 tons of the total 65 for pod equipment and weaponry across those 43 critical locations. The freedom provided by space and mass was the Hellbringer's biggest selling point. If used wisely, it could be an extremely powerful, if fragile, machine. Those who are waiting for me to say glass cannon, you may now drink. Of course, as if just to be ornery, the Hellbringer Prime configuration zigs and zags a bit, and it doesn't directly support my claim. But we're going to do them all in order, because if we don't, I'm never going to hear the end of it. The Hellbringer Prime featured a litany of different support systems which suggested it could do well as a long-range skirmisher or even as a command omnimech. The two primary weapons were a pair of extended-range particle projection cannons split between the arms, aided in their accuracy by a left-torso targeting computer. At the mid-range, a trio of ER-medium lasers set into the left torso could leave a lasting impression on any ne'er-do-wells. A streak short-range missile six-pack was set up high on the right torso to provide a little extra punch. The two machine guns were added to the right torso to help keep wayward infantry and elementals from wandering too close. They both fed from a half-ton of ammunition in that case-protected right torso. The last three additions were defensive or electronics, which reinforced the idea that this was not your typical frontline fighter. The ECM suite and active probe in the left torso provided cover and could hunt down targets that were seeking to avoid being seen. The head-mounted anti-missile system was clearly intended to help the Hellbringer survive a little longer when it did finally start taking fire. Now, we went into this with a hypothesis that this was a high-risk, high-reward battle mech, but the Hellbringer Prime is a counterpoint right off the bat. Thanks a lot, guys, for throwing a wrench into the works. I really appreciate it. We'll see how the rest of the configurations hold out real soon. Reese took his Hellbringer to the left, but the Sunder and one of the avatars started closing the distance with him, probably seeing his heavier mech as the real threat. Before reaching cover behind some fallen rocks along the cliff face, Reese let loose a salvo of SRMs, medium lasers, and one of his PPCs at the avatar he had already damaged, scoring hits with all but the PPC. He didn't wait around to see what kind of damage his attack inflicted, most likely hoping the pause behind cover would give his mech enough time to cool down. Test of Vengeance by Brian Neistel. The Hell's Horses pushed forward with production at their assembly line on Eadeh, which was a Pentagon world that was jointly held between elements of Clan Smoke Jaguar, Clan Jade Falcon, and the horses themselves. The first Hellbringers marched off the assembly lines in 2926 and were quickly incorporated into the horses' tumen and traded with the other clans when advantageous. By the early 31st century, most of the other clans had at least a few Hellbringers in their ranks. Aggressive warriors saw the potential in heavy-hitting, if risky, designs like the Hellbringer and Hunchback 2C, which fit within the framework of their highly ritualized system of clan warfare. Over time, especially with Operation Revival's return to the Inner Sphere, feelings would shift. The Hellbringer A configuration was a little bit of everything build that once again leaned toward a long-range skirmisher role. Two ER large lasers were set into the left arm, provided their long-range reliable fire out to 25 hexes. They were bolstered by a long-range Missile 20 rack in the right torso, but only temporarily as it carried a single ton of ammunition. The Ultra AC-5 autocannon installed into the right arm faced a similar but not quite as dire situation with its 1 ton of ammunition. The two right torso machine guns were given a full ton of ammo this time, stored in the center torso, which was sure a decision. The last two additions to the A config were a NARC missile beacon launcher and an active probe, both set into the left torso. This configuration is a great example of being given a little bit of everything and being unhappy. At a glance, the Hellbringer A appears to be quite strong, but the dearth of ammunition and low overall damage potential when all the numbers are moved around is sad to see. If you're going to drop armor coverage for more weaponry, you have to make it count because you want to be around for a fun time, not a long time. Not a crappy and short time. I wish I could tell you that the B configuration was a big improvement, but once again the Hellbringer was given a curiously eclectic set of weapons that leave it wanting. The right arm Gauss rifle is all well and good, but with only 1 ton of ammunition, the Mechwarrior has to choose his or her shots very carefully. While the LB5X autocannon in the left arm isn't atrocious, it also carries a single ton of ammunition, preventing the swap from standard to LBX ammunition on the fly. At close range, twin SRM-6 launchers set into the right torso were each aided by an Artemis IV fire control system. They fed from 2 tons of ammunition stored in the same side. Finally, an ER small laser was installed into the left torso, providing the only energy weapon defense on the configuration, and a modest one at that. Overall, the B configuration screams dueling build, with the Mechwarrior softening up his or her foe with the Gauss rifle at distance before closing in and finishing off the target with the paired SRM-6s. Of course, the margin for error for such a plan is incredibly tight. The Hellbringer is always on a timer. Eventually, a Gauss round or an ER-PPC shot is going to completely wipe out the armor on your mech's arms, legs, or side torsos. You are living on the edge. Surprisingly, the Prime, A, and B configurations were the only official entries that existed before Operation Revival. That doesn't mean that individual warriors couldn't run custom builds, but for the purposes of official sources, that's what we have with which to work. The Loki began to pivot, bringing its intact left arm to bear on Brian's battlemech. Though slowed by its own size and mass, the movement reminded Brian of a hollow-show gunfighter drawing his 6-gun. Brian did not intend to give the clan pilot enough breathing space to obtain a proper target lock. Dropping her crosshairs onto the mech's scarred left torso, she triggered the Gauss rifle again, this time adding a flight of short-range missiles and a pair of laser bolts for good measure. Brian's attack was not quite fast enough to prevent the Jaguar pilot from pummeling her Banshee with an eye-searing stroke of artificial lightning and a shower of short-range missiles. Still, the enemy's attack was too little, too late. Sword and Fire, Twilight of the Clans, Volume 5, by Thomas S. Grassman. The most notable example of a Hellbringer in the historical records before the clan invasion was during Aiden Pride's initial trial of position to become a warrior. Not one to shy away from a bold plan, Aiden took the initiative in his summoner after hammering a Hellbringer to fire on a Warhawk to deliberately trigger a melee where all foes could participate instead of one candidate fighting one at a time. Aiden was seeking to throw everyone off their likely strategies and score a couple of hits in the resulting chaos. After causing significant damage to the Hellbringer and forcing it to fall backward into a copse of trees, Aiden made the fateful decision to fire on the Warhawk again in hope of disabling the ER-PPC-wielding menace before it could bring down his summoner. With a split focus on 2 opponents and a third in a direwolf closing in, Aiden's hope of becoming a warrior was dashed when an unexpected shot from a 4th mech, piloted by his Sibkin Martha, smashed into the cockpit of his summoner and triggered the auto-eject system. Of course, we all know that Aiden's story didn't end there, but if you want to know how that all turned out, you should definitely read the Jade Phoenix trilogy by Robert Thurston. Wait until after this video, though. Any hope that the Hellbringer's pilot was hurt or unconscious because of the fall was dashed when Aiden saw the mech's knees bend into a kneeling position to push itself away from the top of the clump of trees. Its torso rotated ominously toward Aiden's charging mech. Despite the extensive torso damage, verified by the way armor pieces littered the countryside around the Hellbringer, all its weaponry appeared to be functional. PPCs in both arms were blasting at Aiden. Way of the Clans by Robert Thurston. The next official Hellbringer configuration wouldn't hit the scene until well into the clan invasion. This contact with the inner sphere had a tendency to shift how Omnimech configurations were designed, and the Hellbringer M that was first spotted in 3052 reflects that move away from focusing on short one-on-one brawls and toward a persistent threat that can last more than a few minutes in the thick of it. By this point in the timeline, the production of the Hellbringer was out of the Hell's Horse's hands and was so common among the Tumen of the Jade Falcons that many assumed that this design was theirs. The M configuration featured a trio of heavy-hitting long-range weapons, including 2 ER large lasers set into the left arm and a Gauss rifle set into the right limb. This time, the Gauss rifle was given 2 tons of ammunition from which to chew, which shows that the clanners are capable of adapting their behavior, if just a little bit. For close-range brawling, a Streak SRM-6 on the right torso could quickly work through lighter targets, especially if the standard SRM-6 on the center torso got a few missiles into the mix at the same time. Both launchers had a single ton of ammunition, which was just spiffy. The 1-2-3 punch from the ER large lasers and Gauss rifle could be quite effective and persistent thanks to the near heat-neutral status of the M config on the run. Only when the missile launchers came into play was management necessary. It's just a shame that it took until 3052 for it to be figured out. Perhaps this is where it all shifts. Will the rest of the Hellbringer configurations be as solid? Of course not, don't be silly. In 3052, the Hellbringer received its obligatory advanced tactical missile use with the configuration C. There was still plenty of opportunity to play at long range with the inclusion of an ER large laser in the left arm, which could be paired up with the right arm mounted ATM-6 launcher if the extended range ammunition was included in the 3 tons of arm ammo. At mid-range, a pair of ER medium lasers in the left torso could join in the fun. However, the biggest draw for getting close, despite being able to bring in that high explosive ATM ammo, was the LB-20X autocannon set into the right torso, which fed from 3 tons of ammunition. Against a target that was already softened up with the lasers and ATMs, the LB-20X could either crit seek with cluster shots or fire the coup de grace with a solid round. The 2 ER small lasers in the left arm were almost an afterthought, but I suppose it's nice to have them and not need them than need them and not have them. Overall, the C configuration is a dangerous yet fragile creature. While Omnimechs do come with case standard, that wouldn't save the Hellbringer C from devastating damage should the ammunition on either side torso cook off. An internal critical hit on the left torso provided a 1 in 3 chance of hitting LB-20X ammunition, and another 1/3 chance of an engine critical. Either way, rough times ahead for our friend the Hellbringer. Also in 3054, the F configuration went another route with a pair of LB-10X autocannons split between the arms. Frustratingly, they were only given 1 ton of ammunition apiece, which immediately makes the entire venture suspect. 10 shots, gotta make them count, I guess. 4 ER medium lasers spread across the arms and side torsos provided at least some consistent fire, and a right torso SRM-6 was a reliable punch. Its 1 ton of ammunition sat in the right torso along with the launcher. I'm quite honestly baffled by the F configuration. Yeah, we know that Hellbringers are usually quick to shuffle the mortal coil, but even just 1 additional ton of LB-10X ammunition would make the config much more viable beyond the shortest of bouts. Oh well, maybe we can find something better a little further down the timeline. The Hellbringer was too close to Angela's stalking bears to hope to withdraw in good order, no matter what the Warhawk did to try and draw fire. Sprenge locked onto it and fired his Gauss rifle and long-range missiles. This time, fate was with him. The Gauss rifle slug, a mere blur in the air, hit the wolf mech's center torso, and its chest seemed to cave in. The missiles followed 2 instants later, their wispy smoke trails spinning and weaving around each other as they flew. The Hellbringer leveled its weapon just as the warheads exploded, hitting the cockpit canopy and the gaping hole from the Gauss rifle impact. Explosions went off inside the 65-ton mech, the flames roaring skyward from the hole in its chest as it fell onto its side, half splashing into the river and the soft sand on the embankment. Roar of Honor by Blaine Lee Pardo. The next to last of the 3050 Hellbringers was the J configuration, which returned to a more traditional little bit of everything build. The left arm ERPPC provided its reliable all-ranges fire, and it was backed up by a right arm mounted Ultra AC-5 autocannon in the right arm, which had 1 ton of ammunition. If there's a theme to the Hellbringer, it's that we want to give it ammunition weapons, but never more than the bare minimum in ammunition to actually use them. 4 ER medium lasers were split evenly between the side torsos, and a streak SRM-4 in the right torso wrapped up its offensive gear. The active probe in the left torso improved the mech's ability to hunt, and the anti-missile system in the head provided a little comfort from incoming missile damage. The only novel addition to the J configuration was the addition of jump jets, 5 to be exact, split between the legs with 1 in the center torso. This unexpected agility boost would help the J configuration rise above its peers, and I'm on board for it. Okay, J config, you're alright. 3059 provided us with our obligatory heavy laser configuration in the form of the Hellbringer H. It carried a large heavy laser in its left arm which could do its 16 damage out to 15 hexes. Of course, that also included an 18 heat blast wave to the heat sinks, but that's what they're there for. An ERPPC in the right arm could theoretically be fired along with the heavy laser, but doing so already blows way past the config's ability to wick away the heat. An Ultra AC-5 autocannon in the right torso was given a 2nd ton of ammunition, which is a bit of a shock when, in this case, the H config really needed additional heat sinks. The left torso LRM-15 could chew through 2 tons of ammunition and provided its modest all-ranges damage. The left torso active probe wasn't a surprise at this point, and a pair of APODs made their presence known to any infantry that wandered too close. The H-config suffers from a serious lack of heat sinks that should normally be paired with the use of heavy lasers. It significantly limits the damage output for the Hellbringer and forces its Mechwarrior to leave unfired weapons on the table in those first few minutes of the fight. An easy fix would be to yank that UAC-5 and spend the mass on an ER medium laser and additional heat sinks. The 3050s were the last years that the Hellbringer saw extensive use. Though it was still popular among the Jade Falcons, the arrival of alternative battlemechs highlighted the Hellbringer's shortcomings. For example, the 65-ton Ebon Jaguar, or Cauldron-born if you prefer, demonstrated just how the swap over to 9.5 tons of ferrofibrous and endosteel does wonders for the lifespan of the Mechwarrior inside. While it did sacrifice open criticals to make it happen, the various configurations of the Hellbringer showed that open space really wasn't being used well anyway. Other mechs like the Crossbow and Grizzly ramped up the durability even more with significant investments in armor. It was tough times for the Hellbringer, but it would continue to see production based largely on its low cost. Back in the clan homeworlds, use of the Hellbringer declined over time. By the Wars of Reaving, only Clan Coyote fielded it in any significant numbers. If Joanna had not been trapped in the pitch dark of the mines of Dog Station, she might have considered the Great Gash at midnight to be the darkest place she had ever been. Shaking the sand out of her cloak and brushing it from her hood, she remembered the sensation of being buried alive here in her Hellbringer. But that time she'd at least had the dim glow of her cockpit instruments. Even that dimness had been brighter than any light reaching the floor of the Gash from the few stars visible in the murky Twycross skies. But the good thing was that the surrounding mountain walls were a barrier to the Wallace and its maelstrom of sand. I Am Jade Falcon by Robert Thurston. With all the negativity, perhaps good times were just around the corner for our friend the Hellbringer. The deconfiguration was first spotted in 3069, and it seemed especially tailored to destroying fast-moving targets and battle armor. The 4 medium pulse lasers split between the side torsos were devastating in the mid and short range. They were bolstered by 4 plasma cannons split evenly between the arms, each given 1 ton of ammunition. That's 10 shots apiece for those not yet part of the Church of Plasma. 4 B-pods were installed into the leg criticals, which automatically hit and did their 20 points of damage in 5-point chunks to battle armor that trigger the system in a swarming attack. This actually occurs before the swarming attack roll is taken, and that can impact the outcome of said roll. The last addition to the D config was an emotional support micro pulse laser in the head open critical location. Heat generation could be a problem, but without any combustible ammunition on the mech, this Hellbringer could go all out when the moment is right, clearing away wide swaths of battle armor and hope that nothing survives the conflagration. The Hellbringer D is an interesting niche build that could be a massive headache if you knew you were going up against a force using battle armor. Additionally, there is a case for using it to jam up a battle mech with heat if you can get in close enough to unleash the plasma cannons consistently. It wouldn't be difficult to hit that 15 heat per turn cap with 4 of those cannons hitting fairly consistently at closer than 12 hexes. It's something to ponder. Also in 3069, the Hellbringer E sought to showcase the hyper-assault Gauss rifle technology with the installation of a HAG-20 in the left arm. This giant version of a flechette rifle could spray a target with high-speed shrapnel from very great distance. The HAG-20 fed from 2 tons of ammunition, which was 12 shots for the uninitiated. Teaming up with a HAG at nearly the same range profile were a pair of ER large lasers in the right arm, which provided the direct pinpoint damage that the hyper-assault Gauss relies upon to crack open a target to expose the sensitive fleshy bits. The last addition was an LRM-10 launcher in the right torso along with 1 ton of its ammunition. All 4 weapons can hit from a great distance, suggesting the E-config would thrive in the mid and long range where it can hopefully avoid a good amount of return fire. Heat generation would be an issue, but it's not egregious. The last additions to the mech were 5 jump jets pushing the movement profile up to 585. This boost to agility would help the mech avoid enemy contact when it wasn't wanted and to pop up to ruin someone's entire day when you were ready. Of all the Hellbringers we've seen so far, the E-config is one of the more meat and potatoes and a quality producer. I give it the frog seal of approval. Now, in her office, she found herself wearying of all the intrigue. All she really wanted to do was rebuild the Jade Falcons to their former strength in order to return to the Inner Sphere and finish off what the clans had begun with the first invasion. While there, she would not mind asserting Falcon supremacy over the Vipers who shared their corridor. After all that had happened since Martha had been thrust into the role of Khan, she had no desire to share glory with the Vipers. She leaned back in her chair and pressed her fingers against her eyes. The pleasurable dots of light appeared, sliding side to side, blending with each other, looking like galactic clusters in a dark universe. I'll show them all what a Jade Falcon Khan can do. They will grovel at, but is this not that arrogance? Very well, I am arrogant. I want them all, Khans, the Inner Sphere, all, at my feet. Falcon Rising by Robert Thurston. The two most recent variants of the Hellbringer arrived well into the 32nd century thanks to the fine folks at Olivetti Weaponry on Sudeten. By this point in the timeline, the Jade Falcons were still the mech's biggest fans, though the Sea Foxes always seemed to have one available for purchase. The Hellbringer, like most clan mechs, are increasingly common across the Inner Sphere as cultures mesh and battlefield salvage makes for curious lance and star composition. The Hellbringer G configuration featured an improved heavy Gauss rifle split between the right and center torso, which fed from 3 tons of ammunition. That's 12 total shots, so the Mechwarrior had to make them count. In the left arm, a large improved heavy laser offered the possibility of a 1-2 punch. That left a whopping 1.5 tons of mass remaining, which was spent on 3 ER small lasers set into the right arm. There aren't any extra bells or whistles on this one, and it strangely works. The limiting 12 shots for the improved heavy Gauss are a little annoying, but an inspired Mechwarrior might be able to convince his or her tech to yank 2 of the ER small lasers in exchange for an additional ton of ammunition. Get on it. The most recent Hellbringer arrived in 3142, and it's a partial nod to the original Prime configuration with a little tweak here and there. The twin ER PPCs split between the arms are more viable thanks to our 4 additional double heatsinks. Their artificial lightning is bolstered by 3 ER medium lasers in the left torso and an advanced tactical missile 6 launcher set into the right torso. The 2 anti-personnel Gauss rifles in the right torso along with 2 tons of ATM ammunition are protected by Case 2. Finally, the anti-missile system makes its triumphant return to the head critical with its ammunition safely stored in the right torso. Though the T configuration does lack the electronics countermeasures of the Prime, it retains a bit of everything else, which creates a somewhat dangerous Omnimech. In the years leading up to the IlClan fight on Terra, the Republic of the Sphere had to face down more than a few Hellbringers as part of Malvina Hazen's Jade Falcon Tumen. In 3149, the Republic Armed Forces, or RAF, clashed with the Falcons in the Battle for Thorin, and a lance of 11th Hastati Sentinels ended up cut off from the rest of their unit. Though they were isolated and backed up against a cliff face, one of the lance was a colossal Ares Super Heavy around which the others rallied in a valiant last stand. They were holding their own until a Hellbringer, piloted by a Salama warrior named Jarek, smashed through in a selfless act of self-immolation. At first, when the damaged and nearly disabled Hellbringer hit one of the legs of the Ares, the damage seemed minimal. A moment later, the Hellbringer's engine went critical and the mech, along with the leg of the Ares, were bathed in a flash of an out-of-control nuclear reaction. The resulting chaos allowed the Falcons to sweep in and wipe out the remaining Hastati Sentinels. In 3150, the Hellbringer showed up in a story about a new 40-ton Omnimech named the Carrion Crow. 2 Sibkin, Mechwarrior Carlita, and Star Commander Jory frequently clashed, and in this time the trial would take place augmented within the framework of a fight for the Magnus Bloodname. Though Mechwarrior Carlita was outmassed by Jory and his Hellbringer, she was confident that she could win if she could weather or dodge the first few strikes from the heavy mech. Sure enough, with the aid of the Carrion Crow's ferro-lamellar armor, the Carrion Crow survived and was able to run past the Hellbringer. Jory's paper-thin rear armor was chewed up by the Carrion Crow and its PPC. Her victory over Star Commander Jory earned Carlita Rystar status as well as the Star Commander rank. Though she did not win the Magnus Bloodname, her performance in the trials set her on the road to future opportunities for victory. Marco Hall's Hellbringer also came around to face off with the wounded Falcon mech. A trio of lasers on his mech's left chest shot volleys of ruby bolts out at the hole Natasha had opened in the squat Uller's chest. His laser fire turned the mech's internal structures into a molten red liquid that gushed from the hole as the Uller began to falter. With its next step, the mech's right leg punched up through the chest and the right arm fell away. The mech hit the red dust of Twycross face first, then the cockpit canopy exploded as the pilot blasted free of his dead machine. Bred for War by Michael A. Stackpole. Now, before we talk about some of the legacy items for the Hellbringer, I did want to take a crack at creating my own totally non-canon and unofficial MF configuration. My goal for it was to use some tech that hadn't made any appearance in the previous configurations while still trying to create something that is powerful enough to make taking the risk worth it. The hardware upgrades for the MF configuration consisted of 5 additional double heatsinks, a laser anti-missile system in the right torso, and a supercharger set into the center torso. The supercharger allowed the MF to shift that movement profile temporarily up to 5-10-0 when the moment is right. The 2 primary weapons are a pair of large pulse lasers which do the traditional LPL 10 damage but out to 3 additional hexes. They're supported by an always effective LRM-15 launcher with 2 tons of Case 2 protected ammunition in the left arm. At the same 15 hex range where the large pulse lasers hit medium range, the 3 medium lasers, split 1 in the left arm and 2 in the right, can join in the fun. The Hellbringer MF can fire its 3 long-range weapons on the run without worrying about heat, but mild heat management would be needed once the mediums or the laser AMS comes into play. Hopefully, by the time you're close enough to a target that you're going all in, that LRM ammo in the arm is expended so you don't have to worry about it cooking off. If you're interested in taking a gander at the Hellbringer MF on the tabletop, I've included the free PDF record sheet for it along with the Alpha Strike card in the video notes below. Enjoy! The Loki drew up short, then raised its arms. "I am Star Captain Brayden." "Yeah, okay," Jason muttered as he muted the comm. He'd heard enough clan prattle to last a lifetime. The Loki rushed in while the rest of his unit spread out. Sonya waited, enduring a hail of autocannon and long-range missile fire before unleashing her secret weapon, a clan PPC grafted onto the spot where a large laser usually sat. Coupled with her own LRMs, the blast brought the Loki to a staggering halt, grinding down to 1 knee. Jason had to admire this Brayden's ability to stay upright. Before he could catch his bearings, Sonya ducked her thunderbolt behind a rockfall. Yesterday's Enemy, Shrapnel No. 1, by Lance Scarinci. The story of the Hellbringer wouldn't be complete without discussing one more design, a 65-ton Omnimech designated the Loki Mark II, or sometimes called the Hell. Clearly inspired by the Hellbringer, the Loki Mark II went even further in the mission to maximize mass dedicated to pod equipment and weaponry thanks to a complete structural overhaul with endosteel, 9.5 tons of ferrofibrous armor, and a downgraded 260 XL fusion engine. To buy an extra critical location, the Mark II sacrificed Mechwarrior comfort, using a small cockpit. With its 10 standard double heat sinks in place, the Mark II could boast of having 40 tons that could be expended on pod equipment and weaponry. At the cost of slower movement and fewer open critical locations, the Loki Mark II was better protected with much greater armor, but could still carry more weaponry. Fans of Tetris would enjoy playing with the 30 open critical locations remaining on this Omnimech. The prime configuration for the Loki Mark II carried twin Gauss rifles split between the arms along with a pair of large lasers, one next to each rifle. For close-range squabbles, a Streak SRM-4 in the right torso offered its modest fire. 2 additional heat sinks were added to the mech to make firing those large lasers a little less painful. While clearly a powerful machine with those 4 heavy-hitting weapons, the downsides are reminiscent of the Hellbringer's woes, as the Gauss rifles only had 3 tons of ammunition to share between them. The A configuration shares some similarities with the Prime Hellbringer with a pair of PPCs, medium lasers, and anti-personnel weaponry, along with an Angel ECM suite. However, the wild config to look out for is the B, which carries a long tom cannon in the left arm and left torso, along with 15 rounds of ammunition, which can absolutely ruin your entire day. The verdict on the Loki Mark II may boil down to how comfortable one is with dropping that top speed of a 65-ton mech to 460. It could be worth it for a tougher and more powerful mech, but opportunity cost spares no one. So why do we love the Hellbringer, or Loki? This is a tough one for me personally, as of all the mechs with a strong association with Clan Jade Falcon, this is a very rough one to appreciate. While glass cannon designs can be tremendously powerful, if you end up spending that pod space on a build designed for brawling, you are likely going to run into issues with the whole, surviving a battle thing. I've never had any luck with it. My Hellbringers either die early on from those long-range shots that catch it at an inopportune moment, or they end up doing less damage than hoped for and getting burned down. The legacy of the Hellbringer in universe may be an example of how cultures that have wildly mismatched systems of warfare can quickly highlight flaws in how one or the other fights. Though the clans would eventually adapt to the conditions of the inner sphere, the artifacts of a more ritualistic honor code bound system remain. Now, I don't want you to go away from the video thinking that the Hellbringer shouldn't be feared. In the right hands, in the right moment, in the right configuration, it absolutely could cause some serious chaos in a fight. In a battle against the Capellans on Beanlich, a merc company named Lost Blood thought they had the upper hand on a lance of Harlock Raiders, which had been isolated and blocked up in a canyon. What had been assumed as a quick mop-up turned into a rout as the merc unit's older machines started to quickly take intense fire when they entered the canyon. Turns out the Harlock Raiders had a pair of Hellbringers purchased from the Sea Foxes that were able to concentrate their fire and pick apart each merc battle mech that entered the canyon. The Harlock Raiders survived the trap, and the damage to Lost Blood was terminal. The merc unit ended up disbanding. Maybe the takeaway here is to not count the Hellbringer entirely out. Though it has been overshadowed by more advanced and expensive designs, it could still pack a wallop. I'm curious what you think. Are there Hellbringer superfans out there? Is there a configuration that you think best utilizes the pod space? Let me know in the comments and we'll keep the discussion going. Thanks as always for coming out today. If you think the video deserves it and you want to show your support, the easiest way to do that is to hit the like button, subscribe, and even leave a comment. All of those things make the YouTube algorithm happy. If you'd like to go one step further, direct support through Ko-fi is ideal, and the link is in the video notes. Though YouTube channel memberships are still a thing, and I appreciate them, it's nice not to have to rely entirely on Google's good graces moving forward. No matter what, it's still appreciated. Without strong community support, this wouldn't be possible. If you'd like to join the nonsense and even share your own painted battle mechs for videos, join our Discord server where people get a heads up about what's coming up next, and you have a chance to chat about all things BattleTech. With that, I'll say thanks again. Please go out and make the world a slightly better place today and tomorrow.